it's like I said, I was in law enforcement for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like this. I mean, I went out to the scene with pellets embedded in the asphalt underneath the body. I mean, to execute somebody at close quarters, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, he had more than a lot of kids had. He'd have made a hell of a life if he'd have just done right and what have you.
We are about to watch the commutation hearing of a man who, when he was just 20 years old back in 1990, killed both his parents. I'll unpack with all the details at the end.
So you ready to get started, Mr. Leger?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. You are Michael Leger. Your DOC number is 33777. You're here seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in Vermilion Parish in March of 1994 for first-degree murder, 2 counts for which you received life sentences. Is that information correct, Mr. Leger?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Would you turn over to Mr. Freeman?
Good evening, Mr. Leger. How old are you?
Right now, I am 49.
Okay, and how long have you served in prison on this charge?
I've been in prison now for 29 years and some months.
What was your education level prior to going into prison?
I graduated high school.
Graduated high school. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I've seen you taking numerous classes since you've been there. A lot of them dealing with religion. What class you took that's made a difference in your life? The one that affected you the most?
The thing that I did that probably affected me the most would definitely be Kairos. In September of 2002, I went to Kairos, and that was a major turning point in my life. That was a point in my life where I learned how to be a human being again. I learned how to be a man who loved other people and actually cared about other people instead of just caring about himself.
You also graduated from the seminary school?
Yes, sir, I did. Recently graduated.
Okay. What's your job at the prison?
Right now, I work as an inmate minister, and since they just moved me to Camp F, I'm currently working as a dorm orderly, helping the older fellas in the dorm clean up the dorm as well.
Okay. Do you have any drug usage in your past when you was out on the street?
Sir, occasionally I did use some drugs, yes, sir.
Okay, what drugs you use?
I smoked a little marijuana and did a little bit of ecstasy a few times and a little bit of acid.
Were you using drugs at the time the instant offense happened?
No, sir. I was not.
Okay. Tell me what led up to the instant offense. I mean, I've read the arrest report. I see that you went there. You said you were going to kill yourself, and then your parents helped you, and you ended up shooting him. So tell me a little bit about exactly what was going through your mind and what happened.
What was going through my mind at the time was how much I hated myself. You know, I hated everything about myself and where I was going. And I blamed them for my own self-hatred, which doesn't make any sense to me now, but that's what was going through my mind. And my intention was to try to hurt him. And like I said, I blamed them for my own self-hatred. I wanted them to watch me kill myself. I don't really know why.
Okay. What about your disciplinary record while you've been in prison? Any major encounters?
I think I have 9 RVRs, 9 or 10, not sure. Probably the most serious one would have been a fight that I got into whenever I first got locked up at David Wade sometime in maybe 96, 95. I don't remember the exact date of when that was. That was an incident with a guy in the dorm that, I mean, he thought that, I don't know how to put this in a nicer way than prison vernacular. He thought that he would try to turn me out, and I wasn't going to have it, and we wound up having a altercation. And other than that, I have what else do I have? I have a couple of aggravated disobediences. I think I have one work offense. Nothing really major other than that. That's
What was your last one? What year was your last write-up?
last one was in 1999. It was a Rule 5 aggravated disobedience.
Oh, those two write-ups were when you first got in prison.
Yes, sir. Most of them.
Okay. One thing in your application that kind of caught me by surprise, and I just want you to clarify for this and my fellow board members, when it said why you want to have you pardoned, you says not seeking a reduction, but just want to give a chance to talk to the victims.
Yes, sir. That is correct. And
okay, are you seeking a reduction or not? I mean, that's my question.
I am, but my primary goal is to be able to express just how sorry I am. I've never had the opportunity to tell my family, even from the time that I was sentenced, I never have been able to tell them just how sorry I am that I killed mom and dad, that I took mom and dad away from them, that I destroyed their life. If that's all I get out of this hearing, then I thank God for that. If I receive mercy or a recommendation for mercy, then that's strictly from God. I mean, that's how I see it. I mean, that's the grace that is wholly undeserved. All I've ever wanted for the past 30 years is to tell them how sorry I am. Never had the real opportunity to say, I'm sorry. And I'm sorry that I took my mom and dad's life. I'm sorry I took their loved ones away. I'm sorry for all the pain that I caused them.
Right. It says you have one child.
Yes, sir, that's true.
Do you have any relationship with that child?
I saw Austin for the first time when he was 14, I think, 13 or 14. His mother contacted me while I was at David Wade and told me that he wanted to meet his daddy. And I put him on a visiting list, and I got to visit with him. He came and visited a few times. And then I don't know what happened. No longer had responses to letters that I was writing to him or anything like that.
What is your transition plan if you were to get out of prison?
My transition plan is to go to Father Champine's community.
Explain a little bit to me what that is. I'm not.
Father Champine recently opened a reentry type program, and that would be the beginning of a process for me to seek acceptance into Father Champine's order. As a religious order, it would be a life lived of service to other people, my life given completely over to the Lord for service. I know to some people that's They might not understand that, but that's something that I felt called to for quite a long time, even before I came to prison. As a child, I always felt drawn towards religious order, religious life in the Catholic community. And that is something that I lost direction on somewheres along the way.
I have no further questions, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Mr. Roche has some questions?
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Leger. How are you?
How you doing, Mr. Roche?
Good. Mr. Leger, at the time of the offense, you said that you wanted to commit suicide because you hated yourself.
Yes, sir.
And you lured your parents out this location so that they could see you actually kill yourself.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
At what time or what moment did you say, I'm not going to kill myself, I'm going to kill my parents?
At the moment that I grabbed the gun, I turned the gun towards them and shot both of them.
Now, were you on any type of illegal drugs, or for that matter of fact, prescription drugs or alcohol?
No, sir, nothing at all.
Have you ever had a mental health evaluation
Do you mean prior to that?
prior to that?
No, sir, never had.
My information tells me that you had a mental health evaluation prior to that.
Prior to that, prior to the time of the crime,
Okay, have you had one since the crime?
I have had mental health evaluations since the crime. After the crime, and while I was in the parish, I had a couple of 2 different mental health evaluations.
And what was the result?
I don't know the results of those mental health evaluations. That was stuff that my attorneys had done. They had the results. I don't really know the results of that.
Put on any medication as a result of those evaluations?
The only time that I've ever taken any kind of medication was after coming to prison. I've taken
Thinking retrospectively, do you think you might have needed medication prior to this offense?
most definitely. I definitely.
Why didn't you seek help?
I had asked for help at one point. I asked my mother for help, told her about the thoughts that I had, and that's as far as that really went.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around someone pointing a gun at their parents.
Yeah.
Shooting them in the face and leaving them lay on the roadway and driving away.
Excuse me, I missed the last thing that you said.
I'm trying to wrap my head around an individual pointing a gun at his parents, shooting them in the face, then driving away, leaving them laying on the highway.
That is terrible. That is what I did. And I try to wrap my own mind around that I could be so callous.
Thank you, Mr. Nasher.
Warden Falvey, can we hear from the institution?
Yes, ma'am. he AU'd into us, came to us back in August of 2016, and that's when he came to us to start on his NOBTS training. He subsequently went through and graduated at the beginning of 2020, and since then has served as an inmate minister here. He worked his way up to currently a Min B trustee. Since he's been here, we've not had any problems with him at all.
Good, thank you. All right, we'll hear from the folks who joined us today. First, we'll hear from the people in support. We'd like to start with Ms. Marietta Payne.
Okay. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Or afternoon.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I wrote a 3-page letter that I hope all of you got to read. And I don't know what you want to hear from me. I have had a relationship with Michael through the prison system since I met him. And as you probably read, I met him when I was invited to go to a Kairos closing. And I was told later that he was, I knew from seeing him, I didn't actually meet him that night. I saw him and I listened to him, and I was drawn to him. And I don't have any way to explain that except he looked lost and alone and afraid. And I went back a year later, and that's when I heard him give a talk at one of those closings about what Kairos had meant and how that experience had changed his life. And I walked across when I had an opportunity and introduced myself to him. And from that time on, we began a relationship. A few months later, I called and got his address and wrote him, and he answered. And after a few letters, he said he needed to tell me why he was there and that he had never talked to anyone about it. And he told me what he'd done. And he said, "You probably can never forgive me. I'm sorry for that. And you won't want to write me again." And it was not my job to forgive him. And I told him that had to come from God. And he had to pay for it. And that's what he was doing. And so that was that. And after that, we wrote, he liked to hear about outside. He liked to hear about my children. He liked to hear about my grandchildren. He liked to meet and see my great-grandchildren and my children. And through the years, I brought my family members to visit with him, and they grew to love him. And I wrote him, and he could call me collect, which he does every week. And I've listened to his spiritual growth. I've watched him. I met him and he was a kid. And I watched him grow into a man. And I saw him make such good decisions and good choices and take opportunities. I saw him learn to meet other people and make friends. I saw him become helpful to those people. He was active in so many activities there. And then he started talking to me about wanting to go to seminary. And then he talked to Warden Goodman. And then he was kind of put on the back burner and waited his turn and hoped and prayed and was accepted and went through the trauma of leaving his family, which was me, because I'm the only family he had contact with, and my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And he made the choice. When he was offered the opportunity, it was time for him to go, he went. And he knew he might never see me again. I'm 85. I'll be 86 in a few months. And he knew he wouldn't see those children again. I just always believed that he had so much smart. If you look at his grades, and I told you about those, he graduated with almost a 4.39, I think. And if you could see his paintings.
We're having kind of a bad connection, but if you don't mind, we're running out of time, so I'd like you to wrap up the presentation.
Okay. I just think Michael has something to offer. I'm sure he can offer a limited amount of things in Angola or at Wade. But I believe he has far more to reach other people and would use what he has in a good way. And I would like to see him have an opportunity to help others. In a halfway house, I think he would really be an influence. Thank you for listening to me. I'm always long-winded.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We appreciate your remarks. Moving on, we'll hear from Mr. Van Sanders.
Yes, ma'am. Here I am. I met Michael in 2015. I had moved here from New Mexico, where I did prison ministry there for the Archdiocese of Santa Fe. I retired from the military, spent 29 years in the military in the Air Force. So I'm going to talk about Michael's leadership, his respect that the men have for him, and the love. He said he wanted to be forgiven by his family. And that's something that he talked about because I came down and visited with him from Shreveport and also got the opportunity when he was at David Wade to speak with him. And often that came up about him having the opportunity to say to his family that he was sorry and ask for forgiveness. Michael's a heck of a teacher. He can get in there, and teaching is different from education. As far as being an educator, you go by the book. A teacher has the heart, and Michael has that. He's honest, and I think one of the things that really showed me where he was at was when we bought in a DVD, and it was it was on the Franciscans. And one of the Franciscan brothers, similar situation to Michael's. He was incarcerated, but he finally realized that he had to change, and he did. And he followed in Michael's following, kind of just like him. He found God, and he really believes. And I think because of Michael, I've had the ability to reach into myself and find who I am in a deeper way. And I thank him for that, because there are not too many men that can do that. And he's a beautiful human being, and he made a mistake. And I call him St. Paul. If you know anything about St. Paul, you know what his life was like. But Michael took it to a whole nother level. He's like Jesus Christ. And Michael, thank you for being in my life. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Now we'll hear from Father Champon. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Appreciate your input. Now we'll hear from the opposition, and first we'll hear from, well, I don't know. I think we have the DA's office here and we have some folks there, so I'll let Mr. Woodruff determine if he wants to go first, or if he'd like Ms. Kelsey to speak, Mr. Kelsey to speak first.
Madam Chairman, I'll ask Mr. Kelsey to speak.
Okay.
Come on, Kelsey.
Good afternoon, sir.
My name's Kelsey Leger. How you doing?
Good. Just tell us what you'd like us to know, sir.
Ma'am?
Tell us what you'd like us to know.
Well, first of all, I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my immediate family, nieces, nephews. This here should have never happened, because the way this boy was treated, a lot of kids would love to have what he had. I'm retired. 30 years of law enforcement. I've worked homicides, but I've never seen one this bad. And it's hard being it's my family. I mean, my brother, my only brother, who served in Vietnam, risking his life. He come home and be murdered by his son. That makes it harder. Like I said, I've worked a lot. But this is unreal. I mean, the brutality, the way it was done, getting them out of the house, leading them out to a country road and doing this. I mean, shotgun to the face, it's unbelievable. I mean, there's no way, I can't express enough. And the family is scared. And I speak for several of them, that if he gets out, if he did it to mom and daddy, what says he won't come back and do it to somebody else? And that's why everybody just, they came to me and asked me to speak for them. And it's like I said, I was in law enforcement for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like this. I mean, I went out to the scene with pellets embedded in the asphalt underneath the body. I mean, to execute somebody at close quarters. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, he had more than a lot of kids had. He'd have made a hell of a life if he'd have just done right and what have you. I mean, first of all, he was booted out the military. So, I mean, that's something there that's, that's a sign there. But like I said, his parents would do without. They would do without to give to him. That's how hard, that's how bad it was. I mean, they run to his rescue. Every time he get in trouble, they run to the rescue. I mean, he had, if I'm not mistaken, he had 4 or 5 cars, new cars in 3 years. I mean, what more can you ask for? It just.
Mr. Leger, we appreciate you being here and speaking on behalf of your family. If you could wrap it up for us.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Like I said, I understand he said he's sorry, but he doesn't bring them back. And that's just the way I feel. And I'm sure my family feels the same way. And I appreciate y'all giving me time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelsey. We appreciate your words. Mr. Woodruff?
Yes, ma'am. Members, I was the original trial prosecutor. I'm still the prosecutor on this case. I will tell you that in my 41 years as a prosecutor, this is the most heinous, gruesome crime I have ever worked on. I've never seen anything like it before or since. I did file into the record a couple of crime scene photographs that I hope you've had a chance to examine. I hope you haven't, but they do depict the condition in which the victims were found. Michael Legier's father, Leslie, 47 years old, shot in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun. His features are unrecognizable. And his mother, Lynn Desormeaux Legier, 42 years old, shot in the back of the head, as you can see from the photographs, removed the top part of her skull and left in the road like dogs. You have a number of letters from maybe 10 or 15 family members in the record unanimously expressing opposition and fear if Mr. Legier is released, because I submit to you that he is a psychopath of the first order. Any person who is capable of committing this heinous crime and murdering the people who gave him, I do not believe he is capable of reform, regardless of what has been presented to you so far. He is a danger to society. There's no question about it. And the state of Louisiana, the district attorney, strongly opposed any clemency on his behalf.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Woodruff.
Thank you. I think Mr. Desormeaux is waiting to speak.
Okay, is he with you?
No, ma'am. He's should be logged in. He is
Yes,
the mother's
Yes.
brother.
right. I do have also Willie Panay here with us. Is Mr. Panay
Hi,
here?
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, it's William today. Um,
Great.
I'd like to thank the board for allowing us to participate in the hearing. I understand Mike's apology, but I personally can't forgive him. When we met with Mr. Woodruff prior to Mike's sentencing, our discussion was about whether Mike, excuse me, should receive the death penalty for taking my sister and Les from us. But we felt that closure for the family, particularly our parents, was probably best by a life sentence in prison. And since we didn't have any confidence he would be executed anyway, and now it appears the state of Louisiana is about to do away with the death penalty. I'm also, like D.A. Woodruff, personally concerned with Mike being released and whether he can be a danger to the public. And that's my short statement. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Now we have the Desormeaux. I don't know if they're Mr. Daniel Desormeaux, I guess, Senior.
Senior.
Go ahead, sir.
I don't believe what Mike's saying about he's cured or anything. I don't know if he remember what he told my parents after he killed my sister, that if he got a hold of them, he was going to do the same thing to them. And I don't know if it was ever brought out, but they were scared to death of him. And we still believe the same thing. He had everything he ever wanted. He killed him for it. Now he doesn't have nothing. When he gets out, if he gets out, he still won't have anything. So where he's going to get what he wants? He's going to do it all over again. I just don't trust him. I don't believe he should get out. He took my only sister. She was my twin. And we didn't even get to say goodbye or see her because of the shape she was in. That's all I got to say.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Desormeaux. Is there, Mr. Desiree Jr.? Is he with us?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. First, I want to thank you guys for hearing us and taking our opinions. I also want to say I don't believe the story. You don't invite your parents out to murder them and then go to the police station to report them missing. So I don't believe the story at all. But in any case, my opinion is that Mike's decision to take my aunt and uncle can't be undone. The impact to the family and our society can't be undone. So his sentence shouldn't be undone. Losing my aunt and uncle left a hole in our family. Their absence was noted in every key moment of my life. At one time, I could imagine Mike ever doing this, but now seeing what he's been capable of, I agree with the rest of the family that he can't ever be trusted to be free again.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
The crimes can't be undone. The past and the ongoing impact to my family can't be undone. The risk of future harm to our society can't be undone. So his sentence certainly shouldn't be undone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Desiree. Thank you for your remarks. All right, I think we've heard everybody that's indicated they'd like to speak. So, Mr. Leger, Michael, is there a statement you'd like to make briefly?
I would just like to tell my whole family that I'm very sorry that I took mom and dad from them. And I agree with them that I deserve to spend the rest of my life in prison. If I was sitting in their position, I would feel exactly like they feel. All I ask is at some point that they find it in their heart to forgive me, not asking for their forgiveness in the hopes that I get released from prison. I'm asking for their forgiveness because only with forgiveness will they finally start having peace. They can rest assured that I'll spend my life in prison. And I'm okay with that because that's what my actions of murdering my own parents deserve. That's what it's always going to deserve. I'm really sorry.
All right, thank you, sir. I think the board is prepared to vote. We'll start with Mr. Freeman.
Okay, Mr. Leger, first off, as far as being a prisoner, you are a model prisoner. And I think you can do a lot of in those walls of prison. But I just cannot find it in my heart to vote to let you out at this time. I deny this pardon. I feel that, the victim's opposition and the facts surrounding this event are it's just too much for me to vote to let you out.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Ms. Jackson?
Mr. Leger, maybe one day in the future, there can be restoration between you and your family. And I hope that happens, not only for you, but for them as well. You're still a very young man. You still have opportunities to give and to serve where you are now, because it's greatly needed where you are now. But the thing that concerned me the most is that you your inability to give us any explanation, or you're saying you don't even know why you did what you did. And I think you need to do a little bit more soul searching, a little bit more digging into yourself to find out how was that even possible? You know, given what people have said about your parents and how generous they were to you. Today is not the day. I want to encourage you to keep serving, and keep being a light for others. And again, my prayer is that there will be a time where there's the ability for restoration between you and your family. But today, because of the strong victim opposition and the nature of the farm, my love with you to deny your request for commutation.
Mr. Roche?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Michael, based on express opposition from your family, the victim's family, law enforcement, adamant opposition from the DA's office, and I really think until you find out what your problem is, and you do have a problem, Mr. Leger, you need to get evaluated, find out what your problem is, and get treatment for that problem. Until then, I think you have a potential to be a risk to public safety. And as long as you have a potential to be a risk, I will not make a recommendation. So I'm going to deny your request.
Right, Mr. Leger, so you've received four votes to deny your application for clemency. So today your application for clemency has been denied. I want to thank everybody who dialed in and participated with us today. Encourage you, Mr. Michael, to continue your service work. We'd like to.
Thank you for the opportunity to say that I'm sorry. Like I told you, that's what.
That ending, how he said, thank you for the opportunity to say I'm sorry. It's so manipulative. Don't fall for it. The whole thing is incredibly manipulative. You know, there are venues that he can use that third parties can see if they would be willing to have a meeting, and that third party can reach out to the victims and say, hey, would you like to have an arrangement to hear an apology? To apply for a commutation hearing, to drag the victims to relive this, to stand up in fear and wonder, is he going to get out? That is not the venue to ask for an apology. And it's manipulative, and his manipulation stretches back to when he first committed the crime. We're going to go over the information. Thank you, Richard, for finding it. We're going to go over old newspapers where, you know what his defense was when he was first caught? Thankfully, something that he didn't bring up here was that his parents were sexually him. And that's why he did it. This is the man, a roach, a monster. I know the roach is designated for different types of monsters, but he still has to be that manipulative. And just like every other hearing, we have his supporters come out. The woman, I have no idea what she's on about. Oh my gosh, I met him and then he was lost puppy dog. And then he's been part of our lives. And there was that time when he had to leave and he was never going to see me or my children again. And he did it. I'm like, what? Like, that's what are you even saying? And then we have the other guy come up, Dan Sanders. We've seen him come several times. He's, again, a whole wishy-washy whatnot. And then the rainbows and the butterflies. And then you have the true victims come on. The relative 30 years in law enforcement. Was his brother of the man, and he's crying in tears. The contrast is always so vivid. Supporters and victims, it's two different worlds. And it never ceases to amaze me. And you know what's interesting is that we covered on my second channel, Mandu 2, if you're not aware, and I'll put the link up here, and it'll also be in the description, of a man who killed both of his parents point blank in the house, then ran away to Mexico. He got a sentence commuted after just 16 years in prison. He got out. And then we covered his pardon hearing. He was applying for a commutation to have his record expunged. And his reason was so he can coach kids' sports. Someone who killed both his parents. So we've seen these things before, and we've seen people get paroled, and it is crazy. But he took them out, and he sounded like a spoiled brat, work hard, or whatever he wanted. And he takes them out into the fields, and now his excuse this time was that he wanted to kill himself, which is sick in itself. Imagine taking your parents out so you can, like, it's both sick. Certain people, I'm glad that the board spotted it, because you never know with these things. Let's go over what I was talking about on this article, this newspaper article. Michael Leish indicted first-degree homicide. I'll put these links in the description. Thank you again, Richard. Were formally filed against Michael Lee Tuesday afternoon in the Vermilion Parish grand jury. He was accused of killing both his parents by shooting each of them in the head several times with a shotgun. Leslie Lee, 47, and Lynn Lee, 44, were found shot to death in the evening of November 11th. The bodies were found lying behind a car in the roadway on Parish Road. Passersby discovered the bodies as they were returning home just before midnight. Assistant District Attorney Calvin Woodruff said late Tuesday that he expected the indictments, which were returned. The indictment were given to the clerk late afternoon. According to Woodruff, the Simpson rule was handed down in Lafayette case involving William Simpson, who was recently found guilty in the death of his child. What is it? What are they saying? Whoops. This is the article I meant to share with you. I am sorry. Okay. Michael Lee pleaded guilty to one count of first-degree murder Tuesday and will serve the rest of his life in prison. He was originally charged with 2 counts of murder in connection with November 1992 shotgun slaying of his parents. Ledge, who was 20 at the time of the shooting, was originally entered a not guilty plea by the reason of temporary insanity. As a result of Tuesday's plea, he will not be eligible for a pardon, parole, or suspension of sentence. Whoa, who would have thought that the laws would change? Because here we are. I put a great deal of thought into the decision, said Assistant District Attorney Woodruff. There was a lot of participation from members of his family in making this decision, and I think accepting this plea is best for the public, the family, and I don't disagree with that. This is not like a DA being manipulative. They couldn't know the laws would change, right? Woodward said that after viewing the physical evidence and talking to the psychologist who tested that Liege, plus taking into account that Liege had no prior record, the DA said he decided to accept his new plea. The case was complicated by allegations from one of Liege's former attorneys who claimed that his client was sexually abused by members of the Catholic Church. Those allegations proved false, Woodward said. Oh, shoot. I said his parents. My bad. I screwed up. That's what I thought I said. But this is a huge deal. Like, now, again, if he had come back today and said, hey, this is why, I had it. But when you have false claims, it sets everything back. And again, he was just grasping for straws. If he had come back today and said that this is what messed me up, I would believe him. But he didn't. This wasn't part of his story. They said it was proof false. And I have to believe the case that it was false, especially being that he didn't bring it up today, right? However, psychological tests conducted by a defense psychologist indicated that it was his father, Lynn, who is allegedly responsible. I take it back. I double take it back. I guess I should read these articles before I jump into it. I scan them instead of reading it. However, psychological tests conducted by a defense psychologist indicated that it was his father, Lynn, who was allegedly responsible for his son's sexual abuse, according to Linda Beasley, one of his attorneys. Woodruff said that he was confident that he would have gotten a guilty verdict, but he didn't feel that he could get a jury and sentence Leach to death lethal injection. I'm a realist, Woodruff said. The likelihood of getting 12 jurors to vote for the death penalty in this case was not realistic. I think had we gone to trial, we would have eventually ended up with the same result that we have today. The bodies of Lynn, 44, and Leslie Leach, 47, were discovered just after midnight November 1992 and a deserted parish road in West Aberville. When sheriff deputies arrived, they found a deserted vehicle with its lights on and the motor running, and Leach's bodies were found on the road a short distance from the vehicle. Michael Leach was arrested about 5 hours after the shooting and was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. This is really a family tragedy, Woodruff said. The fact that Leach stood up like a man and admitted his wrong helped to being the healing process for the family that began now. Yeah, after he first tries to drag his priest and then his father through the mud, completely tarnishing their reputation after he had killed them. Now he stands up like a man. Beasley said that the major obstacle in proving her client was temporarily insane hinged on showing that Leach did not know the difference between right and wrong. We had a lot of things to consider. The biggest problem of our case was proving that he didn't know the right from wrong. He said that a psychologist hired on the defense team testified that determined her client was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder because being a 20-year-old spoiled little brat is very, very stressful. Our psychologist said he had recollections of being sexually abused as far back as his memory could recall. There were indications of psychological abuse as well. And we know that that's all BS now. It wasn't part of the story. And it just goes, whenever they bring up experts on both sides, the expert thing in trial court, except for unique scenarios, is such a bogus thing. It's like you can bring, when it comes to, I think, anything psychological, right? Because you bring the defense brings in an expert, the prosecution brings in an expert, and they both have completely different points, and they're both getting paid to say their point. It's so silly. It's a part of the system that is messed up. Let's be real, in my opinion. But here he goes. He is a massive manipulator. He is I think what you would call a clinical psychopath. And even at the end, he starts off by that lie. I did this just so I could say I'm sorry. You're dragging them here to relive the pain. You saw the pain. And even at the end, he needed the last word. I'm so sorry. Shut up. Anyways, thank you, Richard, for the info. I'm glad that we got the end statements there by Miss Jackson, No Way Roche, and even more programs, Mirabella. And with that, I'll let you go.